Hello everyone. We'll be looking at some of the stuff we have not finished yet in Photoshop Block 3, the folder. In here, in last video, we went through how to use different selection tools to extract this statue and put it on a new background. In this video, we'll be covering how to extract a picture, mainly this picture right here of a chair in the nature, and how to use masks for extraction. We'll also be covering how to use refine edge on this flower right here, so we can get some nice edges when extracting the flowers from the background. Okay, I've got this chair right here open in Photoshop. Okay, so with this picture right here, to extract the background, a lot of people will start out actually selecting the background. And that's just gonna make life harder. You're gonna use much more time trying to select stuff than if you actually selected the chair and then inverted everything. So I'm gonna deselect whatever I selected. If you were to just change the colors inside of the chair and not actually make an extraction, it's a great idea to use a selection tool like Select Color Range, and actually in here set your selection preview to none, set your preview field down here to be selection, and set it to use localized color clusters. That's where you limit your selection to be within a confined area, instead of actually, if you click one area, it's going to select that color in the entire picture. Kind of like contiguous with Magic Wand tool. The range is the radius, as you see here. As I increase my range, it's going to select more and more and more down here. I need to click at least once on my picture for me to see the range down here. And you see, the more I put in range, the bigger area it's going to select. Likewise, if I put up the fuzziness, it's going to choose every pixel inside of that range. It's going to, because those orange colors are close by, red and yellow, so the reds and yellows will also be selected, and probably a lot of the browns as well. So the range determines the area of the selection, and the fuzziness, which color of the pixels is selected. Okay, so I could just by shift clicking select more. That's like any other selection tool. You can shift click to select more, and alt click to select less. By just clicking once on an area, you're gonna make a totally new selection, and you'll have to start over making a selection. So I'll shift click to add more. And you'll notice that it will actually start selecting some of nature out here, and then if you put the fuzziness down, it's going to select less of that, and if you put the range down, less, even more less. And I'm just going to ignore these wooden stool-ish things down here, because they'll be kind of hard to select using the color range. So I'm gonna say OK, and perhaps gonna make a selection of these parts down here by just using a lasso, or however you want to do it. But that way we can actually make a quick selection of something that has a specific color. Not very much unlike the Magic Wand, quite similar actually, just with a preview instead. And if I were to change the color right now, I'll probably just put a feather value on it, just to be sure that if something is being changed in color, that it will feather over into the other colored pixels inside of picture. So it's not too sharp in the transition. So I'm gonna say select, modify feather, probably use a value of like 10 pixels. That's up to you. Just experiment with different feather values. That's select, modify feather. Do not include 20 now, because then you'll get approximately 30. Not 30 exactly, because it's gonna be 20, and then the 10 is actually gonna add some percentage to the existing 20. So okay. Next up, I'll use some kind of adjustments. Let's say color balance, and you can actually change the coloring of the chair, or you could use hue saturation to just make it an entirely different color. Okay, so that's fine, but actually I wanted to make a selection of the chair so I could extract it, and we're gonna use extractions with masks. So masks is for some of you a new concept when extracting. I'll just use the quick selection tool to kind of like select this picture. Whoops, I inverted. That was not my intention. I'm gonna just change the size of. I'm using the quick selection tool to select it. Notice with this tool you do not have to hold down shift to constantly add. It will automatically add, because this tool is automatically set to add to selection. And see, I'm really making a very quick selection right here, because contrary to normal extractions and permanent extractions where the background is entirely removed forever, when using masks you can actually go back and alter whatever extraction you made, so the original background comes back again. So to do that, I have my selection now, and if I want to make that selection into a masked extraction, I could click this icon down here in my layers panel called Add Layer Mask. So I'm gonna click this one, and you'll notice that it actually extracts the picture like we're used to by just hitting delete. But in this case, we actually see it as a mask over in layers. If you're working on this mask, and you are, so if you just click once on the mask and you then see this black frame by the mask, then you can actually color with your regular brush, or you can remove with your eraser. I'm just going to color with my regular brush. Here, if I start coloring with white, you'll notice that it will start making the original background come up again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch to black and then remove this part again. I could also just click undo. And then actually you can just be very precise with your selection. And I'm gonna set my hardness to approximately perhaps 95%. A smaller size. And you'll notice that then you can actually just start making a very precise selection. And okay, so if you by accident do like this, then you just switch to, instead of using black, then using white. As long as you're working on this black and white mask over here, if you click this picture once, you'll notice that the colors appear again over here, meaning that you're actually drawing colors onto the picture. You do not want to do that. So we're working in the mask instead. I'll click once on the mask again. And then when you start painting with white, you'll notice that it will start painting the chair back. It's painting the chair back. And I'll just switch. You can circle between black and white down here by just clicking this swap You can actually also just click X on your keyboard and it will swap between foreground and background color. Yeah, sorry about me humming. That's because I'm listening to Amon Amarth, a great melodic death metal band, True Vikings. I think I should change my brush. Let me just switch to the right one. Yep, there we have it. I'm using a vacuum pen tablet, so I want my brush to be touch sensitive. That just makes it easier for me to just, if I want to reduce size of brush, I can always just put less pressure to my digital pen. It just makes the edges more smooth, and you don't have to change between sizes all the time. You would not be able to do it this precise using a regular mouse, and definitely not using a tracking pad. Whoops. Actually, that looks like a carrot. Perhaps I'm just hungry. Yeah, you see the purpose of doing it like this. So you can always go back. This is a non-destructive way of working with your extraction. So and if you use a color balance on this image right here, let's say I tell my image to use color balance or hue saturation, notice that that down here on the icon you'll see that the entire picture is changing. So also the background will change. Even though you don't see the background right now, it's going to affect the entire original picture. That doesn't matter if you're not planning on using the rest of the picture again, and you only want to use it as a mask in order to be able to restore detail. If you, for example, cut off some of the leg from the chair. Just make sure you don't delete from the actual picture, but instead the mask. Yeah. So let's say I wanted some part of my leg to be visible again, then I can just start painting it up. Painting it white and painting it black, depending on if I want to remove or to add. I think this is starting to look nice in some areas. I'll just, oops. Now, if you want to put this chair in some other picture, I'm not gonna finish this up. If you want to put this chair in some other picture, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna open my other pictures in Bridge. Let's say I want to put it in a new background. I'll just go back to Photoshop Block 3 and open some kind of random background. Okay, so you want to have this layer right here inside of this picture. Well, then you could just click and drag it into the other picture, and you'll actually get the chair inside of here. And then you could have a nice chill out place near the lake. Yeah, okay, so I showed you a video about how to make things actually look realistic when inside another picture. So check out that video. That was with the child statue. I'm just gonna close these down. Just 1 second. See, if you want to select the entire chair now and then affect it somehow, perhaps remove some parts of it, perhaps make a feathered edge, a feathered transition to the mask. Then to actually select what's inside of the mask, you could just command click the mask down here, just like command clicking a regular extracted picture. But instead of the picture, you're actually command clicking the mask, and then you're choosing select and perhaps modify contract first to just make sure that it goes in a few pixels inside of the actual chair. Let's say contract perhaps 2 pixels, and then afterwards select modify feather just to give it a soft edge, a soft transition towards whatever background it's coming in with. So feather radius of perhaps 3, and then of course inverting it, select inverse, and then you can just actually, if I'll just zoom in and check right here, you can just not hit delete, because then you're not filling with black. You should be filling with black. So instead of hitting delete, you'll hit alt delete, like that. So that way you're actually refining the mask by putting in more black. By hitting alt delete, it fills in black because the foreground color is black. If it was my background color, which was black, it would be command backspace, command delete. On a PC, of course, that's control delete. Okay, so this is ready to be moved to another picture. I'm not gonna do that. Instead, we'll be looking at bridge again, going into Photoshop block 3. Here, refine edge. The refine edge, we'll be looking at how to do that. So I'm just gonna open up this picture, which is a flower basket, and I'll just make a rough selection quite fast of this flower basket right here. Perhaps it's easier to select the background and then invert it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm using the quick selection tool to just make a quick selection of these flowers right here. And the worst area actually to get a right selection in is this shadowy area, because Photoshop these pixels seems to be quite much the same color. So Photoshop does not know that this is a basket, it just sees pixels, and those pixels are quite similar to each other. So again, we got this bad piece right here, but I'm still gonna try making a selection of it. I would probably use pen tool to actually make this stilk right here, this stem right here. But since we haven't been covering pen tool yet, I'm just gonna try making a lasso, and that's somewhat easier if you're using a vacuum pen tablet or whatever pen tablet brand you use. Perhaps like that. And we see there's some holes in here, and I can try just removing those with lasso, or actually I could also just try using the refine edge to see if it can just figure out what I want and what's the best to include in my selection. So let's just remove the really bad unwanted areas, like, so we don't get those as part of my selection. Things that are easy to remove or add. And I'm just holding down Shift to add and Alt to remove. Okay, and this is a wall, this is not the basket. So I'm just gonna remove parts there as well. It's actually hard for me to see as well what is wall and what is basket, so I'm just gonna perhaps remove a few parts of the basket because they seem more like parts of the wall than the actual basket. And I'm just gonna try making it roughly as it's supposed to be right here. Okay, so I think that's approximately fine. So instead of actually starting to make a mask right now, or starting to do something in the select menu and deleting stuff, I'll just go into the refine edge. The refine edge is, if you're using a selection tool, always located up here in the control menu. But it's always located as well inside of the select menu. Here you'll find it in a refine edge, approximately at the center of the menu. But in case you're not on a selection tool, let's say you're on clone stamp, you won't see refine edge up here, but you'll still see it in the select menu. Okay, so I'll click refine edge and you'll set your view mode to be on layers, because that way you can see transparency behind it. And you'll see what actually this will look like if we click delete right now. I'm going to switch on the smart radius and I'm going to set some kind of radius, and then you'll see that it will actually start doing something to the edges right here. You could start shifting the edges in one direction or the other, and we'll probably want to remove from the edges. We probably want to move inwards towards the flowers, but that's going to make it very much more rough, so don't take a too high value down here in shift edge. Then next off, we can actually run through the flower with a tool. We're actually using this tool is called the refine radius tool. You can switch between it down here inside the refine edge menu, or you can actually switch it up here in the control menu. The size can be changed right here next to the tools. There's no place down here where you can change it, but you can always change it by holding down Control and Alt to switch the size, by just click and drag from left to right to change the size, and the opacity can be changed by dragging up and down. I suggest not doing that when using the refine edge function, but yeah. So what happens if I pull my mouse across an area like this? You'll notice that it will start taking this area and removing stuff. Of course, it's not intentional that I'm actually removing stuff inside of my flowers. You see right now a lot of detail was lost by me painting inside of the flowers. Actually, the intention is that you paint along the edges so it can calculate how the edges should look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this, and you can undo it by using this tool next to the refine radius tool, this eraser, which is called the erase refinement tool. So it's not going to actually delete anything, it's actually going to repaint the picture back as it was before. It's going to erase the refinement so it looks like it was when we got into this menu. Okay, so I'm going to choose a smaller size, and I'm just going to run along the edges. And inside the Refine Edge menu, when we're using this Refine Edge brush, it's touch sensitive. Pressure sensitive, meaning that depending on how hard I press against my pen tablet, the bigger the size of the brush or smaller the size. I'm just gonna run along the edges right here. Perhaps that was too crude, I'll just change that again. I'm not really liking it down here, but okay. Perhaps I should set the radius to be a bit lower. And I can just do the same with everything here. The smart thing about putting a value inside of this radius right here is that it's gonna make the edges fuzzy. And we want that fuzziness, kind of like seeing this as if it was small parts of hair sticking out. We want those to be kind of fuzzy. And that's what this radius will do. The more radius you include, the more it's going to make some kind of fuzzy featherness inside of the object. Making the edges not seem straight and not seem as if they were cut out by some kind of scissor tool. Oh, this area looks really nice. I'm loving that. Of course, you don't have to run by areas which seem nice already. And in some areas I'm also going inside of the flowers to remove some kind of background which should not be there. Just painting inside those gaps. Yeah, I think that's looking nice. So instead of outputting it to a selection, you could output it to a mask. But you can also do that after clicking OK. Then you can just click on this icon down here, make into layer mask. But if you click this output to layer mask, it's gonna make a layer mask like the one we just made with the chair. So select this if you want it done immediately. After clicking OK, perhaps you want a small feather value as well. Let's just see what happens. I'm just gonna increase it very much, and that actually makes the picture very feathered. notice that some part of the original background comes back, but perhaps by using a very small feather value we will get a result which is better than the original one, just dimming down the edges. And I actually think that makes a great result. It's putting a feather value of 0.8. You could also start adjusting the smoothness, but that's just gonna look like it's not fuzzy anymore. The contrast could be increased so it looks more sharp at the edges. Just notice that if it's a part of the original background, that will look more sharp as well. I think I'll just add a bit of contrast just to make it stand out some more. So just try adjusting these values. Probably not a good idea to work with smooth, and the feather value definitely needs to be very low. Okay, I'm not gonna put this on a layer mask. I'm just gonna set it to become a selection, and then I'm gonna click OK. And notice that, oh, where did my stem go? Well, it's not that bad. When I set it to become a layer mask, I'll just click once, and you'll notice, oh, my stem is gone. Well, that's okay. We'll just fix that in a second. But in general, it looks okay. In some areas, like here, I think it looks somewhat bad. So I'm just gonna, on top of my mask, the black and white mask right here, I'm gonna start using a brush to kind of like go in and make it look good. And that doesn't look good. So perhaps I should switch to using another type of brush. I'll just right click with my regular brush, right click, and set it instead of using the regular brushes you can find in here. Just go to the settings inside the brush right here, and here you can choose for it to use natural brushes or some other kind of brushes. I'm just going to switch to natural brushes, and instead of clicking OK, I'm going to click append so it does not delete the brushes already in here. So I'm going to click append. That will leave them down here at the bottom. Then I'm going to search for a brush called charcoal, and we see that there's actually a few brushes here called charcoal. I'm going to select a random one of these, and probably a small brush, perhaps size 11, with an opacity perhaps set to 25%. So it's gonna be a small change. Then I can just click in these areas and make kind of like a very fuzzy transition. If you want to see what I'm doing, I'll just switch up on the opacity again, and you can see that I'm actually kind of like making these daubs, paint daubs. So, and it could also be a high opacity if you want to do it fast, but it's probably gonna get some edges that look a bit rude and rough. Oh, and you can just continue doing like that all across the picture. And actually, if you take this information and try using it on pictures of people with hair, you can actually remove the background quite easily, as long as their hair is not all over the place and their hair is not in a million different colors, or set on a background which is entirely the same color as the hair. Okay, so I'm not going to do this on the entire picture, but I'm going to go down here, and I want to fix this stem. So I'm actually just going to take a white brush instead. Going to switch it to become my normal brushes right here. And I'm just going to start painting this area up. There we have it. And then I want this stem to come back, so I'm just going to use my my brush set to black, and perhaps a small size and a hardness which is quite high. so it becomes a very, so the stem is not kind of like blurry at the edges. Whoops, we moved too much there. Luckily we can always get that back again because we're using a mask. We moved a bit too much right there. But you can always add again. Okay, so I'm just gonna make my brush size somewhat smaller, perhaps 4 pixels, consider to paint in white to paint back. And just gonna paint these features back from the skin. Perhaps even use some of the original background. Just make it seem as if that background is actually stem. Yeah. And then you can just switch to using a brush which is, let's say, charcoal in small size with a low opacity if you just want to make some kind of fuzzy edges. And of course not white, black of course. And that will make the results seem realistic. When you're done with this picture, you can also start putting in some details at the basket edge by just painting it up with white and a regular brush with a high hardness. Not 100%, that's too much. You can just start painting the basket back into reality. See, I'm just painting it back, and whenever I take too much, whoops, I'm just gonna switch to black to paint back the background. So I can get exactly what I want. So that's making extractions using masks. And we'll have more about masks in the future. I thank you for this exercise and have a nice day. Ciao.